Have you ever just sat there in pure awe watching the DVR of some world champ drone racer ripping around a track at the speed of light? Ever notice just how calm and laser focused they seem to be? These are the guys that are putting hours upon hours every single day to hone their craft, like hone in their skills. 30 days ago, I sat here thinking to myself, what would happen if I tried the same? What would happen if I tried my absolute best to train my drone racing skills every single day? Would I really improve, or does it come down to more than just practice? Is it natural talent that I lack? Do I have the focus, reaction time, and discipline necessary? These were the sort of questions that I had fogging my mind, so instead of ignoring them and allowing them to exist as questions, I did decide to find out some answers. Previous to this episode, I've actually had the opportunity to interview two world champion drone racers who both have extremely notable advice that I have simply never applied.
Who are the people that are succeeding? It's the people who are doing things that other people are not. They're the ones who are working the hardest at coming out with the next best product, working the hardest at trying to be the next big thing.
You need to fly a lot, but more important than flying a lot, you need to have fun.
Go all in if you believe in it, because that's how you win.
If you're having fun, you're going to fly more. You're going to fly more, you're going to get better. You're going to get better, you're going to have more fun.
That competitive nature inside of me just made me push really, really hard for an extended period of time consistently before, eventually I started to see results.
In an attempt to close a substantial gap between myself and those pro-level racers, I made the decision to dedicate 30 days straight to FPV drone racing. To do this, I formulated a three-phase plan, which was as follows. Phase 1 would be for the first 7 days, where I'd have one simulator training session of an hour on any track I liked. Phase 2 would take us through the following 14 days, where I'd be swapping that simulator session out for a real-life fly-around with gates. This was, of course, going to need to be weather-dependent, and because it's winter here in New Zealand, my hopes couldn't be too high. Phase 3 would then take us into the final week, where I'd be honing in solely on this year's Australian Nationals track with a daily session on the simulator, plus a setup of the small aspects of the track in real life. This isn't actually the first time that I've tried an experiment of similar nature to this. About 3 months ago, I tried solely simulator practice for racing over a period of 5 days. Now, although it did show some small signs of improvement, I learned more from the experience as a whole rather than from the training itself. What I mean here is, after that episode was released, you guys mentioned I should change my rates, and honestly, that was something I'd never considered to be of importance. Since then, however, I've changed my rates from whatever the stock ones were to Evan Turner's 533 rates. This change improved my ability to fly more smoothly and have way more control over the stick, so lesson 1, if you plan to do the same as me, is to remember to set up your rates first. Now, in order to be able to accurately measure my progress over the 30 days, I needed to start off day 1 with a controlled trial session. To make sure as many variables are controlled, I'd be doing the trial session within the Velocidrone simulator. Within the simulator, I'd be able to use the 533 switchback quad, the same battery dynamics, and the exact same track setup that I planned to use on day 30 of this experiment. So I threw myself into the deep end a bit and gave myself 30 minutes to land my best consecutive 3 laps on the Australian Nationals 2023 track. I had previously flown the track in the prior week, so I knew the route to take, but to make sure I was feeling fresh, I went in with absolutely no warm-up whatsoever. As a starting point, 52.874 seconds over 3 laps was actually pretty satisfying. It did, however, spark my curiosity to find out what I would be like in 30 days' time. Did I shave off a second, 5 seconds, 20 seconds? Honestly, I had no idea. My first 3 days, however, were just as I expected them to be, just rinsing and repeating. Practice, find a new track, practice some more, find another track. You get the picture. The end of day 3, however, was where I hit my first brick wall. Yeah, I know, I managed to make it a solid 3 days before something went wrong. That something was my controller's plastic gimbal snapping. For the past few weeks, it had felt like something was a little bit off with the right stick, but just couldn't quite pinpoint what the issue was. I, of course, ordered a new gimbal, which then took an entire 4 days to get to me, because all of this happened on a Thursday night, and things don't move quickly in the post over weekends. Monday did come around, however, and I got the new gimbal installed into my controller, and then completed days 4, 5, 6, and 7 simulator training. That brings us on to phase 2 of my experiment. For the following 14 days, I would be practicing in real life with my actual race quad instead of on the simulator. The only limiting factor that I'd be able to experience here was shitty weather conditions, but those hopefully few days would simply be replaced with an hour on the sim. Now, if you thought that I was already off to a rocky start in week 1, the next 2 weeks would be an absolute living hell.
This rain, it's not working out. You can see it's actually heavy as heck. And to top it all off as well, The controls on this thing seem to be super off center. Don't ask me why it's doing that. Something probably needs to be recalibrated. So, back to the simulator. This rain, yeah, it's just getting heavier, isn't it?
After that lovely first outing, I figured that I actually needed to recalibrate my controller, which was the cause of the tilt issue. Moving forwards though, we come into what might just be the first truly positive part of the experiment. Day 9. For the first time, I had blue skies, a working controller, and currently a drone that flew.
I'm actually really excited though. After recalibrating the controller last night, the quad should, in theory, fly perfectly fine today. So I've brought 2 flags, and we're just gonna see if we can actually, I don't know, fly around some gates and just get used to flying in real life and not just on a sim. I'm actually really excited. So here's to the start of finally flying in real life again.
Day 10, we were back to square one with the weather. I wasn't able to fly outside again, but it did happen to be another great day where I finally nailed 3 consecutive laps on the Australian Nats track, coming in at just over 43 seconds total. That means in the past 10 days worth of training, I'd managed to pull my time down by about 9.5 seconds. That's a solid second per day, which made things start to look really promising for me. Day 11, I drove a few hours down to my dad's place for the weekend, so I didn't have any gates with me, but we did get a bit of a break in the weather, and I managed to sneak a flight in just before the sunset. I was actually really surprised with how well the little analog camera was holding up in the low light. Like, it was getting pretty damn dark, but kept on powering through like a champ. Day 12, however, after 3 days of positive vibes, came and slapped me in the face with a plate full of issues that honestly had the potential to screw up the remaining half of the entire experiment. As usual, the first flight went great. I was boosting around a bit of a bando, honestly having a really fun time, and it only ended because I had to bring the quad back in to clear a water droplet. The moment I took it up for pack 2, I noticed my vision was becoming blurry. My first thought was, oh, the water droplet must have smudged the lens, but also as usual, I was wrong.
The lens has come unscrewed, so it's not very ideal.
So I opened the quad up to access the camera, and in doing so, I actually ripped the wires off of the camera itself.
I'm an absolute idiot,
Absolutely caked the camera. We're out of flying for a couple of days with this at least.
Not all was lost though. I did manage to resolder the tiny 3 wires back on, and well, it worked to an extent and I got my camera feed back. To end my second week of the experiment off with a bang, I had 2 solid days of real life training.
If it looks polar freezing right now, it's because it is. I managed to actually fix the quad as well. Really surprised my soldering skills allowed for that, so hopefully that stays in place today. Everything else is good to go. My fingers are so cold, but we have flag, 2 gates, and I'll kind of figure out what exactly I'm gonna be doing flight-wise when I get out and fly.
Now, if you remember back to day 12, I mentioned that I was served a plate full of issues that had the potential to screw up the remaining half of the experiment. Yeah, well, about that.
We're back at square one again. The quad now doesn't have a camera feed at all. It wasn't connecting Crossfire today or the VTX either. And then suddenly it started up and the camera was just grayed out. So whatever that means, I've ordered a new camera and we got a completely different camera coming in. Probably won't get sent out till Monday, so I might get it for Wednesday.
I spent the next few days training back in Velocidrone, waiting for that camera to arrive so I could solve my issues once and for all. Even longer than I predicted though, it took until day 21 to get the camera into my hands.
All right, the little camera has arrived. Look how cute that is. So we're gonna have to pull the drone apart, resolder on a new camera, and hope that everything works perfectly after that, because if it doesn't, then we've got other issues. I was so hopeful for myself that this would be an easy fix, and I absolutely fucked it, didn't I? Hopefully it's not one of these, because nowhere in New Zealand right now has got a Crossfire 69 in stock. Anywhere.
Everything had gone to complete shit and I couldn't afford to really waste any more time fixing the drone up, so I decided that the best I could do was to knuckle down into Velocidrone, fly the Australian Nationals track every day for the last week, and just see what progress I could actually make.
So 30 days ago, I sat in this exact chair on this exact simulator with this exact controller and went into this 30 minutes cold, absolutely no practice whatsoever. This is the final test. This is to really see if this 30 days of everyday practice does anything. Today, I'm aiming to get the fastest time ever. I've got 30 minutes, basically starting from the second that I click quick start, and that'll be me. So without further ado, let's try and get a fastest score ever. Well, 39 point something seconds. It's not my best time. My best time of my practices got down to 37 or something like that. So we're 2 seconds slower. Today's probably the worst that I've been on the simulator, and it's definitely got to do with the stress and the anxiety behind having 30 days of training leading up to this one moment.
I'll be real here, the disappointment in myself was thankfully short-lived, as I soon came to realize that a 13.5-second speed increase between day 1 and day 30 was actually fairly significant. I can honestly say that I gave this last month at least 1 hour of practice every day, which for me was the most time that I could actually dedicate over those 30 days. But in reality, it all swings around full circle for me to understand that these top racers are not only super talented, but they also dedicate insane amounts of time to their craft. They practice for hours upon hours every single day for months and even years on end. It's actually helped me understand that much like everything in life, you want to be the best at something, you not only need to outwork everyone else, but you also need to apply consistency and dedication to whatever it is. Look, I can promise you that there were many days during the last month that I didn't have the motivation to train or go out in the cold weather, but because I threw motivation out the window and instead relied on dedication, I managed to show up every day just like I said I would. So if you're sitting there wondering how to get better at racing or simply anything in life, I promise you that it just comes down to hard, dedicated work. Write that down and get your ass out there, and we'll see you in the next one.